Hi, Glee, I'm Susan and Cole. I'm your great-great-grandmother. Here is what I'd like you to know about me. I was born the daughter of Owen Cole and Sarah Turnbow, on the 18th of June 1827 in Rochester, New York. I was the sixth of 8 children. My siblings were William, Dinah, Lucinda, Nelson, Clarissa, David and Benjamin. Being of Dutch descent, I understood and practiced thrift and industry, which characterized the Dutch people. The message of Mormonism reached our family in New York and we joined this very unpopular religion. My family moved to Kirtland, Ohio, where we could practice our new faith. It was at this place that I met and was courted by Joshua Davis. I was 14 years old when we were married in the Nauvoo Temple on November 22 in 1840. Our first child, William Dennis, was born in Carthage, Illinois on July 8, 1842. William died 6 weeks later on August 20. We lived in Carthage a short time when a mob drove us to Nauvoo, Illinois. We enjoyed peace and prosperity long enough to build a beautiful home. We were helping to build the beautiful city of Nauvoo. Joshua worked building the Nauvoo Temple. It was at Nauvoo that we were close neighbors of Joseph and Hiram Smith. Henry Lewis, our second child, was born December 20, 1844, while we lived at Nauvoo. Mob violence soon became so severe that we and our 2 sons planned on leaving the state. Nauvoo was a busy place during these days. Committees were moving about disposing of property, and the proceeds were immediately turned into the buying of wagons, working animals, and provisions. Blacksmiths, carpenters and wheelwrights were busy all the day long making and repairing wagons. The sound of hammer and anvils could be heard even far into the night. We were compelled to move west, across the Mississippi, settling in Fox River, Iowa. Joshua Martin, our third child, was born here September 3, in 1847. Our next home was at Council Bluffs, Iowa, where our fourth son, Heber Carlos, was born October 23, 1849. Along with many other trials, we suffered the loss of this little one a few months later, on February 15, 1850. We abandoned our home at Council Bluffs in June of 1850 to join others in crossing the plains and mountains to Salt Lake City. We were with the first company of emigrating saints for the season of 1850. We left June 3, from Caneville, Iowa, with the Captain Malie Andrus Company. It consisted of 206 people, 51 wagons. This company had 9 horses, 6 mules, 184 oxen, 122 cows, 44 sheep, 46 yearlings, 19 dogs, 1 pig and 2 ducks. Some of the rules of the company were, we must retire at 9 o'clock and rise at sunrise. The camp comes together at 8 o'clock for prayer. No swearing in the company, no shooting allowed within 20 rods of the company. No loaded guns allowed in the company. No loose powder allowed near fires. The company commences to travel at 7 o'clock in the morning. We passed hundreds of graves on the way west. Our 2 boys were too small to walk along the side of the wagons. They suffered most from the dreary riding from early morning until night, for 2 months. The irksome journey was not all that the 2 little boys had to endure. En route to Zion, both Henry and Martin contracted the measles. They were both sorely affected, but Henry suffered most. He was so near death that we drove to one side of the road, expecting him to die at any moment. It was thought in those days that the drinking of water was very injurious to persons who had measles. Consequently, water was withheld from the boys. Seeing that Henry was about to die, I gave him all the water he could drink and he recovered. I always thought this was what caused him to recover. During the trip to Utah, I learned to make shoes from an Englishman in the company. This trade proved very useful to me, for when I reached Utah, I made shoes for my own children and many others. We reached the Salt Lake Valley in September of 1850. We stayed there a few days, then we went south to Provo. We went to Provo because we heard that game and fish were plentiful, that the land was very fertile, water abundant for irrigation, and many of our old friends were settled there. At that time, the Saints who had settled in Provo were living in a fort which is now at North Park, because of Indian trouble. Joshua built us a small log house in the southwest corner of the fort, where 3 months later the first girl, Emily Anna, was born on December 23rd. Eventually, Joshua bought a fine stucco home for me on 3rd North and 4th West. It was considered one of the finest in Provo at the time. My brother William made the first threshing machine in the state for Joshua to use on his farms. I delighted in making artistic things for my home. I made beautiful quilts and embroidery. I dyed wool with artistic colors, and wove it into cloth. These were all arts which I enjoyed. I knew well the meaning of hospitality. My home was always open to visitors. Many people enjoyed my cooking, which I was famous for, especially my cherry pie. Johnson's army was camped at Camp Floyd. Joshua would take many baked cherry pies to Camp Floyd and sell them for 50 cents each. I possessed a keen sense of motherhood. My other children were Susan and Orison Hyde, Albert Marion, your grandfather, Burdell Thomas, Rachel, and George Alvaro. After having 11 children of my own, I raised 3 other children, Julia Bigelow, Jasper Davis, a grandson, and Pearl Jepson, a niece. I was the first wife of Joshua Davis's 3 wives. His other 2 wives were Elizabeth Jane Brandon and Johanna Anderson. Joshua married Elizabeth in 1853, 3 years after we arrived in Provo. She was 16 years old at the time. She was born in Tennessee. Elizabeth had only one daughter by Joshua, who was born in Centerville, Utah. She left Provo shortly after their marriage. Joshua married Johanna in 1856. She was a Swedish-born girl and was 17 at the time. Johanna lived on the same block, in Provo, that I did. She had 6 children by Joshua. Our granddaughter Ranetta Davis paid us a wonderful compliment by writing about us saying, "Their thrift, their hospitality, their genial disposition have been a guide to me." Unquote. My temper was sometimes ruffled after I had called and waited for Joshua to come to meals, but my irritation did not perturb his jovial manner or break him of his tardiness. I always enjoyed going with Joshua on his buggy rides around Provo. In the last years of my life, I suffered almost total blindness and poor health. I died Sunday evening, January 4, 1891, in Provo at the age of 63. I'm buried next to Joshua in the Provo Pioneer Cemetery. Thank you for listening, Glee. I love you.